All right, man. Back with another one, another episode of the Crown Cast. Joseph Honeysett here,
Joel Engulu, co-host right here.
co-host. So we got an incredible honor. We have a big level entrepreneur that's has his hand in a few different things right now. Former NFL athlete and somebody that just spreads the kingdom through business and conversation. We have Taylor Symmank with us today. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys doing?
Pleasure to be here.
Man. I'm super excited about this episode, man. Because you're athletes to athletes. We're all athletes here, and so we kind of speak the same language. But I'm excited to hear your story. And so I guess to begin, man, that's what I want to begin with is your testimony. Like some of us grew up in the church, grew up with Christianity, and we changed, and then we go back into Christianity. Some of us is different, where we found God later. What's kind of your story? How did you grow up? How did you find God? If you want to just like share that for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I'll try to keep it short because it can get very long on this. But yeah, man, basically, obviously grew up in sports and grew up around a family that was faith-filled, which was amazing. I'm super thankful for that. I know not everybody gets an opportunity to have that or support that way. But it also comes with its own challenges too, right? And so with that being said, growing up, kind of got to the space probably in high school was really where like you get, as growing up in faith, you get like multiple moments of like testing of that faith, whether it's yours or whether it's your parents or whether it's like real or not for you. So like that senior year going into college was that first kind of like real test. Obviously there's multiple that you get, but it's more of like on your own type style. And then later, same thing happened at the end of college, and which I'll get into in just a second. But basically throughout, thankfully I had the right people, had good people around me, all that kind of stuff, which I'm super thankful for. But the thing you notice, if you guys are both in sports, you understand, and people are listening that are in sports understand, it's like sports very easily can become like your world. And so that was me. Like we grew up in a family around sports. My grandfather coached the Cowboys, won a couple of Super Bowls with Tom Landry. And he was a strength coach, Strength Hall of Fame. So like we trained, we did all the things as kids. Like that was just what we did. And so it was like just life, right? And so that became what everything was kind of about. That was also the way out. I wanted to be the first one to actually make it to the NFL for my family, not just from a coaching side or not just from that side. Like that was the goal as a kid. I still have a piece of paper, my prayer. When I was 12 years old, I wrote like to go play in the NFL, and then if I have to, I'll kick. Which I'll get into in a second. And because I didn't want to, I thought kicking and punting was like it was just like for people that were soft. You know, I ain't gonna talk to that guy, right? Like I just never wanted to do it. But I always could because I played soccer. We were encouraged as kids to play basically every sport. And then my grandfather was crazy and make me do like random stuff like gymnastics, fencing, martial arts, like just all types of stuff just to help develop the overall athlete is what he called. So I just did a bunch of things. And so obviously that being said, always did the kicking thing just because I played soccer and I got to be on the field longer. So I was like, why not? And it came into handy later because as a senior, I didn't grow till later. So senior in high school, I'm 5'10", 145. Obviously I'm white. I'm not fast. I'm not fast yet, right? Like later, by God's grace, all those things changed, but it was too late for recruiting because I graduated college at 6'3", 195, ran a 4.4 on pro day. I'm like, where was this when I needed it? When I need to get recruited?
Yeah.
But at the time, not recruitable for a receiver at the D1 level, which was where I wanted to go. So the kicking was really the option. First school I went to a D2 school because they told me or promised me I could do both because I wanted to play receiver. That was the goal. And then when I got there, it was just a recruiting tactic. They're like, well, we can't play receiver because if you get hurt there, we'll lose your receiver, kicker, punter, kickoff guy, the whole thing. I was like, that makes logical sense now, you know. But in hindsight, I thought it would be a possibility. So played one season there. Had to teach myself how to punt, actually, because I didn't do that before. But didn't have anybody else there recruiting, which actually was the biggest blessing because that actually is what I ended up doing mostly in the NFL. So it worked out great there. But I left after that first year, walked on to Texas Tech, or walk on, I guess, because I couldn't transfer. It was a 4-2-4 rule at the time with NCAA or something like that. But the school I went to, so I had a mandatory redshirt. And then played there at Texas Tech, went on to play in the NFL. But point being, that's kind of like a small, quick journey of like where like previous life or whatnot. But then when I got to college, my senior year, the biggest test of where like the identity piece came into play was because I was getting basically, I mean, you're not recruited, but looking to get drafted here at this point now by a lot of NFL teams. We had scouts on, the sidelines and stuff like that. I was the top kicker and punter in the country at the time. I was leading all the different records and so forth. But the 5th game of the season, I tore my hip flexor. So going into obviously the most important time of the season, or year even, got hurt. So which I was out for 5 or 6 games. I can't remember now, which basically disqualified me from ever going to play a certain amount of games in order to get the rewards for, it's called Luke Rosa or Ray Guy Award, which is the punter and kicker award for the year. I got disqualified from that because I didn't play enough games. So I lost the opportunity to do that, even though I was leading the race in both of those. And so that was a whole thing in itself. But when I graduated, was able to come back for the last 2 games, set a school record and a season record in the last game against LSU, which was great. Like I was like, awesome, I'm back, like da-da-da. And the reality is a lot of NFL teams were still suspect if I was healthy. So it hurt my draft stock. I was supposed to get drafted, ended up not. Went to 2 different teams and basically rookie pro days and stuff like that. Not pro days, basically rookie camp. And they did well, beat both the guys that I was with, and like, hey, like we love what you're doing, but we just can't really, like you just came back, right? Like who knows that you're fully healthy kind of deal, and we're gonna spend millions of dollars on you. It's like, hey, we'll just keep you on the chart basically. If something happens, we'll bring you in. So I had to wait a whole year, essentially on that. And that was hard because before I left for college, the thing I told myself is I'd never move back home. I'd never go get a random job. And I would never do like going back home. I also at the time, I'll mention this one, and a girlfriend at the time that we were somewhat serious, and we ended up being like, hey, it's just done. And so all 3 things, right? Moving back home, same place, posters still on the freaking walls in my high school room. And then I go and have to, work a random spot just to make money while I train. And then obviously no girlfriend, right? So I'm like, this is terrible. So basically everything hits the fan. I'm like, what's going on? And at that point, it was a real question because I had tied like my performance in sports with like God's favor for me. And so I was like, man, like if I'm doing well, God must love me. I must be doing the right things. Right. Okay, now things didn't work out in the career. Did I do something wrong, God? Like what happened? Like what did I do wrong? What did I like? How do I fix this? What can I? And it became very obvious that I attached them instead of being separate, and I got to steward a gift well, is what football was, right? It wasn't that God loved me more, God loved me less. I couldn't earn it. I couldn't earn like a good game, like just because I spent more time with him. Like that's not how it works, right? But at the time, it was just everything was flowing. I'm like, I'm just gonna roll with this, right? Let's just go. Anything I could do to, get the upper hand, I'm gonna pray. Let's go. Like that's gonna help me. Why wouldn't it not? Right. So like that was like the mindset. And so that time, that was a real space where I got to develop a lot deeper in faith. Obviously, I don't want anybody to ever walk through that. It sucked. It was that 1 year back home was like the most depressing part of my life. Because I was like, what? Like I thought everything was over. That I'd worked so hard for, and I was like at the very top, then I was at the very bottom. And then everybody asks you, right, when you're back home with friends and family, like, hey man, like how's the NFL stuff going? I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. Don't ask me about this. Like I don't know. Like obviously. And so that was tough. And I wouldn't change it looking at it now because it developed who I am. But at the same time, like it gives you like this in my stomach, like, wow, that was a terrible time. I wouldn't want to go back to it. But what I got out of it was so like I wouldn't be able to have the capacity at all of what I have now, right. Or like the understanding. It's totally different. And sometimes you have to like walk through things in order to really get it, and you can't just like tell someone, right? Like it was one of those kind of things. So that season was hard, but it ended up working out great. Took some time, obviously. Like I said, took a full year, which sounds so short in retrospect, but in the season you're in, you're like, bro, like
He's like,
12 days is a long time. Like,
Yeah.
only about 52 weeks. Like, that's different. So it was good at that point. Right after that, I ended up getting picked up by NFL teams, Minnesota Vikings that year later, and then spent 3 or 4 years in the NFL after that, right? And then kind of everything kind of followed that trajectory, and then got into, like I mentioned earlier, with sports, and then I got into business, which we'd get into, and then what I'm doing now. But that was one of those pivotal moments, right? And it was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, cool, like, how is your relationship? What is it like? And like when you think about, like, I thought I had like this, let's just say faith was like a skyscraper, right? Like I had all the floors, like 34 floors up. I'm crushing it, doing the thing, and I'm seeing a different perspective. And then life hit me, and I realized like 20 of the floors were kind of fake, like they were not strong. And so then life hit me, and I would drop down to floor 10. And I'm like, dang, like I didn't build this correctly. And it was I built things of my faith on things that were not actually biblically sound or true. It was more just, it was immature at this point, like immaturity in what it was. And so now I was able to build that back up the correct way, right? So like when things come against me, I'm not freaking, huffing and puffing and blowing the whole thing down, right? Like it is a cliche things of saying, right? But that's kind of what happened, right? In my faith aspect. So now it's different. It's completely changed. Obviously we still face struggles every day, but it's just different because you're not blowing down to like ground zero. Like at that point I was like, God, like I need you to show that you have all this stuff, because everything, I'm just confused. Like everything was contradictory. It was hard for me to read the Bible at the time, because I was like, but you said this, but I'm living in this. How does this make sense? Don't get it. I need you to show up because I'm confused. And so I got super like below in that space, obviously, which led to like the depression part I talked about. And then like wondering what's the point of all of this? Like, if this is what you got from me, like to build all this up, that was my run in life. Like, bro, you're going to take me now. Heaven sounds good. I'm like, let's roll. But that leading up to that point, that's when kind of like the depth of my faith really started, because I started to get it for myself, obviously. And I started to understand that like what was actually true instead of what I really wanted to get out of it. Because they're different, right? Like wanting to get something out of something based upon what it could like promote me to is not how it's designed. That's not what it is.
Right.
From a faith standpoint, there's a lot of like, there's so much benefit in like having like God's wisdom and his stewardship and all the different things he can help you walk in. But mine was like wanting that for a particular thing. And if I didn't get that, then maybe I missed the mark, instead of understanding I already have his favor and operating from that place. Right. It doesn't sound like a very gray line. It's a very thin line, but it's a massive line in the reality of understanding perspective. And so I had to learn all that stuff. But yeah, essentially that's kind of how that happened. And I don't want to keep going on. There may be other things that you guys want, questions that will kind of dig deeper into those. But that, as a theme line from as short as I possibly can, and like the duration of time to then with a pivotal moment and faith wise, that's kind of what it's led up to.
Wow, man, that's a crazy journey, man.
Well, did you feel that? Did you feel that?
I felt that, man, because it kind of happened to me, man. I'm just like, man, because sometimes you feel like you're by yourself. You feel like, man, when it's happening to you, man, you're like, man, I messed up. It's probably something I did, but the other people are fine, but it's something I did. So you know what? If this, like how you said, if this is my life is about, I'm good. Just take me now, because I don't see a way out. And so I relate to that a lot, man. But growing up, did you was it non-denomination? Was it Catholic, or how was God in the play in that?
Yeah, so very, very young. We were probably, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years old. We were in Baptist, and then we went non-denominational from that point. So yeah, those were basically the two from a young age.
Gotcha.
Man, I asked Joel, like if he felt that. I felt that. I'm an athlete. I felt that twice actually, from being an athlete. But I had joined the United States Air Force afterwards, and so I would see a lot of guys, right? Like as an athlete, you find your identity in like, man, I'm a basketball player. I'm a football player. Like that's who I am. Everything that we do, like that like the culture that connects to that sport, we all kind of associate ourselves with. The military is the same way. Like, you're doing that for, a number of years. Like your goal is to be as good as you can at your job. I did counterterrorism operations, right? So it's very much like a locker room mentality, because we're going after bad guys. But when you leave it, I would see so many different guys just be like, I don't know who I am, right? So it's something that we all deal with in some form or fashion, but definitely with athletes and former military members, man. But from that, like, I love what you said. You had to, now you're falling back on your faith. Like, you have to you understand that foundation, so it's okay, and you don't find your identity in what you do. You find your identity in who you are and who you're made to be, which is incredible. Because as an entrepreneur, in the beginning, man, if you connect it to the value that you're adding to other people, you're like, I got nobody that I'm adding value to. I'm just here alone. So it's necessary, man. I love that perspective because it's real.
Yeah,
100%.
Man, talk about college. So college is, man, for me, like, I grew up Christian home, and same thing. Basketball was identity. When I played bad, I thought, God, I sinned or something. When I played good, I'm doing the right thing, So, but when I got to college, man, that's what you got to figure out for yourself. You got to, like, find God for yourself. So how did you balance that from, like, because I'm pretty sure Christ was still in you. Maybe you were practicing strong or not practicing at all or not as strong. But how did you balance that yourself, like, with football and having to live the athlete life, but also trying to be a Christian as well?
Yeah, for sure. There's obviously always a challenge in that. I did go to, at the time, I don't know what it is now, but it was like the top 3 party school in the country at Texas Tech when I was there. And so obviously different scene, right? Now there's nothing wrong with partying and having a good time, but there's also a different way that I was carrying myself. And so it makes it a little bit more challenging because you have more options, right? Like, and so that was obviously a piece of it, an element that I had to obviously walk through, learn through, and love at the same time. And so, but the cool part is early on, I was able to connect with some good people. There's always a few on a team, right, that you're like, oh, cool, like, this is my guys, right? This is the squad I'm going to create within, and then you can kind of create that outward as well. So I was able to do that pretty early, which was great, because then those friends lead to other friends, and then you're like, oh, cool, I got my people. Right. While at the same time, because ultimately all of them are like, right. I think the easiest way to explain that is like, you have to, as believers, right, you have to surround yourself with people that are not believers. Like, that's just life. Right. And as frankly, I think you should, like, that's what we're called to do. Right. It's not just about staying in a bubble. But at the same time, you need people that you can lean on. Right. It's not just about being out there lone wolf warrior all by yourself. Like, because ultimately the line becomes gray, right, for you, not necessarily them. And so then that becomes a dangerous part, because now you're in a space where you don't have, like, people around you, no support. And so counsel as well, like, all that stuff's important. So once you develop it, then it's a lot easier to do that. So for me, one, it was about creating that, like, infrastructure, if you will, from a business terminology, like, around me of the right people, the right wisdom, the right counsel, so that I could see it, because it's very easy to become gray in a setting that may not be something I want. However, for me at an early age, like I said, at 12 years old, my goal was playing the NFL. And so, like, I got to see it from a perspective of, like, a Hall of Fame coach who had won Super Bowls, and, like, very strict from a strength coach perspective. Right. So, like, it was different. I knew, like, the drugs, the alcohol, all the different things that would typically take guys out, right, were already talked about, and how it ended people's career. And I was like, I don't want that. Like, if I can just avoid that, then I'm good, which helped me avoid 80% of the problems, to be honest, right? The only other problem outside of those is girls, frankly, right? Like, so then I'm dealing with 20%, which is a lot easier to manage than 80, right? Because then you're in trouble. So that just became like a nuance I had to figure out through it. But I think ultimately, I talk about this a lot, is like, when the vision is clear, it makes it very easy to make decisions, because your vision makes decisions for you, right? Because now you're walking into a place where your mind is already decided. And so, like, when things pop up, it's like, well, that doesn't fit. Like, okay, it doesn't line up. Boom, that doesn't line. Same thing with you. Like, you understand, like, you read, like, God's word, read the Bible, and you, like, operate by that as, like, your measure, like, the ruling, you rule up against it, like the measuring stick. Then when things don't line up with it, it's like, well, that doesn't align. So cool, it's easy to push out. But if I don't have that, then I'm like, how does that work? I have nothing to measure it to. I have nothing to line it up with. Like, hey, this is truth, this isn't. That's a lot harder place to be, because I'm living in a confused space. Confusion obviously is not from God, right? Like, so, like, there's so many different things, and we make bad decisions in the confusion, because, like, I'm not sure what's best. which is why counsel is important. Like there's a lot of different things on why that's all the space. So thankfully the structure, as well as obviously God's grace, because you can have all the structure and stuff like that, but there's so many different things that easy things can happen like that you're like, oh, how did I get here? Right. So there's a lot of that, I would say, but really from a systematic standpoint on setting yourself up for success, it's getting the right people around you, obviously making sure you're rooted and established, right? And then two, continuing to keep moving in the right direction, and keeping the perspective that needs to be had, and then hanging around the right people, right? It's very cliche for people. Everybody's like, oh, you hang around the 5 friends, you become like them. So true. It's not cliche. It's real life. I've seen it now for so many times, countless at this point. Business, sports, the whole thing. I've seen guys throw their whole careers away from sports because they're with the wrong person for one moment, one day, like truly one day. His whole career was over. I saw it was sad. I was in college, and he was never like that. But it was just one moment. So it's very, very important. That kind of stuff. I've seen it happen in business, because what happens is this gray line is established, right? Like, okay, cool. It's black and white. I know this is right. I know this is wrong. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. But then you hang out with somebody that does it this way. It's like, oh, the line just shifts a little bit. And then you make a decision in the gray and you're like, holy smokes, I just messed up. And that sometimes has repercussions, right? And so it's, that's a long-winded answer to how you would structure it. But yeah.
No, that's good, man. I mean, that's kind of what I did in college at first, man. I just found a church, I found some people, hang out with them, and try to find that core base. Because, man, people, especially if you're an athlete, man, you get pulled everywhere. Everyone wants to be your friend, everyone wants to talk to you, and the girls it's unlimited. So having that strong core helps you kind of, hey, remember the focus, remember the mission, remember what you're here for. But I mean, in college, did you were you a part of any the college ministries? Were you doing anything like that, or was it just straight football and then you kind of just did your life with God by yourself?
We had a couple of different groups that we did college ministry wise on campus that we had, and then we had obviously SCA was huge for us, and then we had some other things called Athletes in Action, and then we had just a few other things that we did as a group, but collectively we'd go visit hospitals and stuff like that, pray over kids and stuff. There was a lot of cool things we got to do, honestly, because we were athletes, which is great. That I wouldn't be able to do just as somebody normal, just at school. Because it's a great opportunity, right? I couldn't go do it now is the thing, which just sucks. It's wild that you can't do that. But at the time it was awesome to be able to do. So yeah, I was definitely involved a lot in that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's amazing. What you got, Joe?
Yeah, man. Association is everything. Can you talk about why, from your perspective, obviously being a business coach and helping businesses scale, can you talk about that from the business side of, you're working with somebody who's, a client, a mentee, and they're doing what you're telling them to do, but they still are listening to maybe their old association and how that impacts them and the results that they want?
Got it. Just to make sure I'm understanding the question clearly, is someone's in a business, someone's coming from a previous company operating by a different way of operating essentially, and then having struggle of transitioning to the new one?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So I think the biggest thing is, and probably the fastest way to kind of heal that, I guess, for that individual, is you got to understand their purpose. You got to understand their why. If not, it won't connect, frankly. If I can help see their vision and then connect my vision to theirs, so it always will work, right? If they don't see how it makes sense and there's no reason to change, especially if they've been successful, right? If I've been successful doing this way, I've been successful doing it this, then I'm going to continue doing it. You don't know what you're talking about. That's where their mind will be. If they haven't been successful, they're usually more open, right? It's okay, cool, show me. But usually it's the people that have had somewhat of success. It's a little bit harder because you have to almost not reprogram, but in essence, you kind of have to retrain the way of thinking around it or a different process around it. At that point, it's really it's proof, showing them how it's done. And sometimes it's the hard part that people don't want to do is letting them in and letting them mirror and watch you do it. And so a lot of people don't want to be watched. So as a leader, a lot of times oh, let me tell you what to do, but don't watch me do it because I'm probably not great at it. Well, there's the disconnect. you need to be great. Like, not necessarily you have to be great at it, but you need to be like, hey, let me show you. And then as you watch me do, like, oh, okay, cool, that's not that hard. Or, hey, like, actually, that really worked. Let me try it. Like, that's where their mind goes. And so as a leader, you have to lead. Like, that's the ultimate definition of a leader, right? And so the easiest way is to lead them through it, not just lead them to it. I think that's where a lot of people stop. Like, oh, cool, I'm going to lead you to this change. Cool. Take it how you want it. No, let me lead you through this. Let me show you how it works. Let me show you the benefit of it. Let me show you why this is important. Let me show you. Let me show you. Let me show you. It's all biblical, right? Like, that's what Jesus did with his disciples. He didn't just say, hey, go pray for people. He showed them how to pray. He didn't say go heal people. They watched him for years, like praying and healing people. Like they saw it firsthand. And so when it was giving the Great Commission later, it was a lot easier for them to walk in that because they saw it for so long. And so the same thing happens in real life, right? It's all the same. And so reality is like Jesus was the greatest leader. It makes sense. Like we just replicate what he's got.
Right, man.
It's hard to do, but that's the result.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
I think it's that time, man. I think people just get too busy. It's almost like, hey, I see the homeless guy. I'm like, here's $2, right? And you feel like you were good, but did you really help him? You know, I think it calls you to like take out yourself, take out what you're doing for the day, and then pour into that person. There's a Hebrew word for that, but pretty much the description of help is a picture of it, and it means like going down with that person and helping them come up instead of just like, hey, man, this is what you need to do. Do this, do this, do that. No, I'm actually going to take you through the process and show you. And that's what like leadership and help really means. And so it's pretty much what Jesus did, but you described it. But I just like the way you said that, because some people don't understand that. It's like, nah, man, you got to take yourself out of what you're doing to go. If you really want to help that person, go help them. Don't just talk about it. Don't just give them examples. Go show them, you know? And so
100%.
Yeah, which is weird today, because right, like coaching as a business is like, I don't know if it's just my algorithm, but everybody's a coach, and I think it turns off a lot of people because you can put coach on that title. It's easy. A lot of times people are just looking for that transactional. Hey, send me money for a course. You go do the course. I ain't worried about the results, right? But the most effective is like exactly what you said. Hey, let me come down. Let me help you. Let me show you the why and the how. And I think that's great that you said that, because like I said, man, so many people have that perspective of coaches right now. And typically, you know, the ones at the top are, you know, get a lot of the flack for different, you know, scams and things of that nature, man. What, from your perspective, being a coach, helping business owners, like what in that do you focus on in terms of helping somebody grow their business?
Yeah, so it depends on where they're at as a business and what they're wanting. Obviously, everybody wants to make more money. Everybody always wants to grow or scale. Like, right, like that's usually the main purpose.
Yeah.
But how to go about it for each business is a little bit different. And the right way of going about it is also different depending upon industry and team, frankly, and what they have in place. And so that's really where I start, right? Is like understanding what the vision is, right? And then making sure that the vision can fit everybody else that they have on their team too, right? And if not, then that's where there's going to be a huge disconnect, and there's not going to be buy-in. There's not going to be any of that, no matter what you incentivize, because they won't value it, right? And then if you just incentivize more money, especially on the sales side of things, what ends up happening is they'll just look for more money other places once they get to a certain space. Like you're not going to be able to keep them. And so ultimately it's bigger than just that. That is important for salespeople, but at the same time, there's a lot more at stake there. So it really just depends, because a lot of times it is also structure, like how they're operating their SOPs, like their systems, if you have heard of EOS, of like how that's all set up, people in the right seats, because sometimes they're making, the business owner themselves are making all of the decisions when in fact they have people that should be handling some of that, and they should be able to hand that off. A lot of business owners built from the ground up, and so they're used to doing it all and they can't let it go. And so that's where a lot of people struggle. But also that's where they bottleneck, because you don't have enough time to do it all, and that's where the stress is. And as a business owner, you can get rid of all your stress and still produce 80 to 90% of the same results, and you have 80 to let's say 60% of your time back. That's a way better situation, because your 60% time back could have a tenfold on the things that you do every day, versus having to do like, hey, I got to send an email. Hey, I got to do that. bro, like you should be beyond that. Like you should be beyond sending out that stuff. You should have someone trained being doing that, and you can focus on generating new business and bringing the income so they can pay everybody easier, right? Like that's just where the business owner should be. So like things like that obviously is where it's important. Sometimes people have that already built. So now it's about, okay, how do I create a brand for myself at large, like company wise? Like how do I do that? Or how do I help the people in my company find their purpose within the company? And it's not just entrepreneurial side of things. It's like, okay, how do I find the individual person's purpose and then tie that to the vision of the company so that every single day they come into the company, it makes sense why they're here. It's not just for a paycheck. It's not just to take it home, make sure I'm okay. It's like, I actually enjoy being here because it helps me fulfill blank of my purpose. Like coming in and being able to do that for companies is huge because productivity goes up. Obviously revenue goes up, customer service goes up, all of it goes up because they enjoy being there, which ultimately is a lot of times like you try to pay more people to get those things done. A lot of times just helping them find purpose within the company. And then all that stuff happens naturally. And then it's just funny how that works. Usually more revenue happens in, so you can pay them more, right? So it all works together. It's just about finding where they're at because everybody's at a different season, a different space in their journey. And so helping them get to the next spot.
Yeah, it's that delegation, man. We talked to another, he's a predominant entrepreneur, but talked about solopreneurship and entrepreneurship. Solopreneurship is the person that does it all, and it's pretty much the bottleneck. And then you can't grow that way. You get stuck, you get stagnant. It's when you start delegating, you start hiring people to do some of the work you can't do. And at first it sucks. At first you're going to probably lose some, but it's like addition by subtraction. You're going to gain so much more. And so I talked to a lot of business owners that's what they're stuck at. And I'm always encouraging, you got to delegate. You got to take that sacrifice. You might take a 6-month hit, but you don't understand it will come back twice, 3 times fold, you know? So it's like that trusting in God. And even like in the book of, like when Exodus, whenever Moses is going crazy, right? Jethro comes up to him and was like, hey man, you're pretty much the decision maker. You're doing everything. You need to split your role or you're gonna die. And that's like that stress, that anxiety, all that stuff is real whenever you feel like you need to do everything, you know. And that's not biblical. Even God himself was like, bro, let's pretty much give man who we are. Like, let's make man in our own image. Let's let man rule the earth. God can do it himself, but he loves sharing his authority with mankind, you know. It's delegation.
Yeah, I got a question for you, man. For everybody's goal, like you said, when it comes to business, is to scale their business, make more money, right? That's the bottom line, right? What are the, say, top 5 most common mistakes that business owners make that prevent them from getting to a 7-figure business?
That's good.
Good question. Number one is they don't have a clear, it sounds very cliche, but I'll kind of hopefully dive into a little bit. They don't have a clear enough vision of what they want it to look like. And what I mean by that is sometimes they can't see a couple steps ahead of it, and that's fine. There's seasons for that. And so like you may be like, hey, cool, like I know the next step, I don't know the next 10. That's fine. But as a business, like people always say, like, know your like the exit strategy before you enter a business, right? And as much as possible, trying to get to that, like, hey, this is what it could look like. This is what it could build to. This is what, because frankly, as you build a business, you're the visionary, and as you bring in more people, they don't know what you see, so you have to be able to communicate what you see. If you don't know what you see and you can't communicate it, it's not big enough to fit them inside of it. There's no reason to have them on your team. There's no reason for them to join you, right? And so if you don't have those things dialed in, then you're a solopreneur forever, right? That's just the truth. And so that's number one. Number two is probably, once that gets dialed in, you got to get around with the right people, frankly. And so developing skills which if you can't develop them all yourself, then you surround yourself with people that have the skills. And so basically you as a company develop the skill, right? Like that's ultimately the goal. It's just a unit. So like, you don't have to have all the skills, bring in somebody that has it. So you don't have to spend all your time doing it. Connect yourself with that way, incentivize them in some particular way. Even if you're bootstrapping it, there's ways to do that, to incentivize them. So surround yourself with the right people, essentially, is the next step. And then, because a lot of times people they'll just surround themselves with the first available person instead of the person that's the right person. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And sometimes there's seasons for that, right? The first available person needs to help me get to this space, blah, 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 and then I can actually bring in the right person. That happens. But as long as you're understanding that too, right? Going through that process, because they're representing the brand as well. And if they're client facing, that could be a very bad thing sometimes. And so you got to make sure it's the right individual. Another mistake, not knowing your numbers, like not knowing your business. And what I mean by that is, if you don't know like the pitfalls of the industry, if you don't know the pitfalls of the business, then you can't prepare for them and you can't position yourself to answer them or how to handle them. Because when they happen, usually it's not convenient timing, right? Like, so if you had an idea of, oh, I knew this was coming. Okay, cool. I have an idea of what I've been positioning myself so that we could handle this. You're in a way better position, right? It's playing. If you ever read the book, Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick B. David, he kind of hits on this point. It's like understanding and trying to stay like in chess, like the grandmasters are 10 moves ahead of the normal average player, which is kind of crazy to think about. Cause I'm like, oh, cool. Move, bishop 1, 2 squares, 3 squares, whatever I need to do. They're thinking about, once I move that, I got 10 more moves after you. You're frankly, you're unskilled at that point. And you can be completely demolished by someone like that. But reality, that's business, right? You have people that are experienced in your industry that may have 15 years of experience that know once you make that move, you're very vulnerable here. You don't know that because of the industry or the information on what you know, or you don't surround yourself with other people to see the holes in your decisions. That's why it's important you get yourself surrounded with the right people. So in short, that's why that one. Another one would be, I would say, first, starting out in businesses, this is different for businesses that are already established, obviously. But if you're not fully bought into your vision, like you're fully not bought into the business, it's very like, okay, cool. Like what we find most people that are just starting a business is, all right, I've got, business over here, I've got business over here, and I've got like 10 different businesses that I'm all the owner of, and it's just a title game. Yeah, I'm the owner of all these different companies. Cool. Like, where's the revenue? Yeah, I make $50,000 a year between 10 companies. So you make like $5,000 each. Like, what are you like? And that's an exaggeration, but I've met somebody very close to that, and I'm like, why don't you?
Streams of income, man.
Well, that's the other caveat, right? Of like, that's what people hear, but the reality is, once you start getting around like the people that are fully really successful and like fully at the level that they think they're at, that's not how they got their income.
Exactly.
It's weird, right? Like they did one primarily, if they're lucky they had two, but one thing that was this tried and true thing that they put all their time and their focus and they were diligent with. And then that overflow turned into other streams. Just like any river that God's ever created, it comes from an ocean, creates all these different rivers, they all flow into it, right? We try to get to the rivers and then try to get to the ocean. Not how it works. Right? Because like, oh, I got many streams. Awesome. But you start in the river. Why don't you go to the freaking ocean and build out the stream? Like, it's the same thing. Like, so obviously that's all God designed it a certain way. Like nature operates that way. But so it's very easy. Oh, cool. I make $5,000 here. I make $5,000 here. Awesome. That's $10,000. Oh, and sometimes bootstrapping like that is important for a season. Right. But once you find like that thing, then I can go into it and I can make $10,000 in one. And then if I make $10,000 in one over and over, instead of 2 places making 5, I can get really good at the 10, and that could turn into 20 pretty soon, right? And then I can get known for that, and that can turn into other relationships, and that could, like, you can just make money off of them, but you still stay focused on this, and that's how it turns into something. So I think people I would say, like, they window shop their own dreams, essentially, right? Like, and so like they're like, okay, cool, that'd be really cool to have a business like that. Like wishing it and wanting it is completely two different ball games, right? I wish I had this business. And so you can wish to be in a bunch of different streams of businesses, but like really wanting it requires a lot more sacrifice, and some people aren't willing to give it. And so that would be another pitfall. And then 5, trying to get 5 for you. I would say, yeah, I mean, it really comes down to like not being a good leader yourself, which ultimately comes back down to like growing in the skill sets of it yourself, like trying to like so just like Jesus, like you have to be the model. And if you're not the model, then you need to become it, which means that you have to become it. Becoming it's hard. So you have to like put so much work on yourself, because ultimately as a single business owner, the better model you are, the better the business is, because the model is built on you. Right. And so like, if I try to focus just on the business and I forget about myself, then I'm going to exhaust out at a ceiling of where I can only reach, because I'm not capable of reaching beyond that as an individual. And then so as I continue to grow myself, I have a gap to actually grow to. And so that is a space, especially early on. Like obviously with a full business and you have so many different people that you can grow in, right? But like as you're starting out by yourself, the really only like needle mover is you, right? So like if I got to focus on developing myself and then putting myself in spaces that get me to think bigger than what I am, and then also strategically putting myself in positions to actually do the right things, if that makes sense. Because frankly, what happens is like on a downside of that, if you don't develop yourself in the right ways, when money comes to you, which in essence, like in the world, that's like great, right? Obviously, everybody wants to make more money in their business, but if you're not able to hold it for long, like you're not able to hold it, meaning like your integrity is lacking, your character is lacking, your all the different things that are actually really important to actually hold that thing long term. That's quick. That comes in, you tarnish your name. Now every other business you go into forward is now you have like uphill climb forever. And so like you developing certain things in yourself so that when money does come, it's not, oh, making a decision just for money versus making a decision that's correct. Because sometimes the correct way of operating leads to a lot more later. But that requires you being able to know and say, hey, like, I can't do that because it operates against what the company's values is, or the company's missions. I could take your money, but it just doesn't fit. I'm not going to do you a service. Awesome. Move on. And you can have that self-control. It is powerful later because first off, not many people do that. And so there's a respect level that those people operate in as a client. He just said, like, he could have took my money, but he didn't because he said it wasn't right for me. There's a different, that communicates it's not a scarcity space, right? Mentality wise. And that's where I think a lot of people is like, oh, cool. Any dollar I can get, any money I can do. Awesome. Like I said, there's seasons for it. There's seasons where you have to say yes to everything because that's all you get. That's what you're at. But as you start elevating, that does have to change a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Success is it's a inward then outward experience. Like you got to be the best version of yourself to provide the best version or the best product, the best service, right? Because we're all talented, right? Like you were talented at football, but ultimately it had a ceiling for itself where you ended up leaving the NFL. Like as business owners, we all have a certain talent and skill level, but we can remove that ceiling by progressively working on ourselves each and every single day. And by doing that, we're able to impact others through, just us, our leadership, or the product or service that we do provide. I couldn't agree more wholeheartedly, man. And I think a lot of times, in 2025, that's something that's overlooked. It's like, man, let me just go get the bag real quick. And then I'll worry about all that other stuff like that. My integrity and my character, my word isn't as valuable to me right now. I got to go and focus on the money. So that's just, my perspective.
Yeah, 100%, man. And it's the reality. That's why there's like the push and the challenge I try to give as many people as like create an image or a model that people can follow doing it right and getting the bag, because there's not very many, because it's possible, but people don't think it is. And so they sacrifice the things that they shouldn't to get something. And the reality is they didn't have to sacrifice it and they could still get it. But the ramifications of sacrificing it are long-term and can hurt people involved too, right?
Yeah.
It could burn bridges. It could burn relationships you don't intend to. And I made mistakes of that myself, right? And so there's for the almighty quote unquote bag, right? And like the reality is that there's a way of operating in which you can have both. And I think that's where the understanding of like God operates in abundance, like he's got like the cattle on 1,000 hills, like there's not anything he can't do. Everything still bows to God. So it's like, that is the reality but we live in a world where it like tarnishes that viewpoint to makes us think like, oh, like this is the only way. No. Like, first off, God is the way. Like, so he created it. So we're just seeing a version of it that the world like posts about a lot or shows us a lot or broadcasts a lot. And so we think it's the only way. When in fact, it's really not. So I always challenge people to become that. So more and more people see it done the right way. It's like, oh, like I can do it and still be a good person. I can be very wealthy and still be a great person. I can be successful and still have integrity and still have done it right and still be above reproach. Like that's possible. It's not like you have to sacrifice that to get money or to sacrifice that to be successful. And I think we get taught that.
Yeah, 100%. Especially I feel like Christians as a believer, so many people are like, oh, money's evil, wealth is bad, right? And it's those incorrect negative seeds that it progressively makes people think the way that you had just talked about right there.
Yeah, and one of the things too I think people miss is like money's bad. It's not money's not bad, it's a tool.
Well, yeah.
But it will reveal more of who you are. So
Exactly.
if it reveals more of who you are and you don't like what it reveals, then you need to work on yourself. Money wasn't the issue, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, the verse also is the love of money.
Exactly.
That's a different thing than actual money because money is not necessarily. It's a piece of paper. Like I could look at this piece of paper right here, and it's like this doesn't have any like effect on me. But if I love it so much that it makes me make decisions that are not honorable, then yeah, that's a problem, right? And that's where it becomes into. Because God obviously understands that we need money to operate and to live, right? Like it's part of life and how we operate here in this world. And so it's a piece of it, but the part where we start making decisions based upon that instead of what God's walking into, because where I see the issue, and I'll keep it short here, is like we make decisions. If we make decisions just based on income levels instead of alignment, which is very hard to do because sometimes the income level can be the right alignment, right? Like it's not just like I'm going to avoid the high one because this one seems better. And sometimes like it is that one that is a higher amount because that's the right alignment. So like there's that you have to figure out. But ultimately there is, so I'll say it like this, like sometimes if you look, it's hard because you see it alone. You have to see like a multiple year long game approach for this. And the easiest way to explain it is, let's say you're 25 years old and you get in a company where like it had the long game. It's like that would be the right space. Over the next 5 years, I could really develop into being something or develop into becoming a certain level in that company, right? Those 5 years could be used where I'm like, this is where I want to be. I could build into something, but there's another company at the same time at 25 years old to offer me double pay right now. And so that's a tough situation, right? It's like, cool, I could technically keep it for 3 years and then be 3 times as far along, right? And then so forth. But what ends up happening sometimes is we sacrifice the double income one. And in 3 years, it is definitely not the right culture. It's not what we want to represent. It tarnishes kind of our reputation a little bit. And all of a sudden we walk out in 3 years. We seem ahead, but a lot of times because we're also not established, we spend money differently because we're trying to present ourselves as someone as wealthy, when in reality, we spend all the extra money that we should have put ourselves ahead with, and it's gone by the time 3 years is over, and we didn't really get them further ahead. And we come back over this company 3 years later, and there's 2 years left on that pool. That person that had been 3 years in that company for 5 route is at the same level I am, but is at a completely different trajectory. Now he's at a VP of that company and he's developing his skills so that at 5, he's way ahead of me.
Right.
We don't view it that way because it's not right now and it doesn't really pertain to that. And so it's hard because that makes sense when you say it that way, right? But I got rent tomorrow. Like that's what we deal with, right? And so there's that avenue for sure. But God does play a long game. Like that's been his thing. And so it's not that you can't have it all right now because you can. And it's not that you have to sacrifice the money. That's not the point of the story. The money's not the point of that whole story. It's really the understanding of seeing it the long game. I just use money because everyone understands it. Oh, double money? Yeah, cool. I'll sign up. Like that's how everybody goes, right? Like I would too if I can make double on what I'm doing right now somewhere else. Yeah, let's roll. And as long as it aligns, like everybody wants to be able to do that. But at the same time, like it's about looking at what you're sacrificing. And so making sure wisdom and wise counsel and stuff like that, because in the real world, you can have both, right? You could be with that company for 3 years and then transition to this other company at a higher level because you've done a lot of cool things, and that continues that journey on too, right? That could totally be great. And you can get to that VP spot faster because you've had other experience. So both routes are like legitimate. My point is, it shouldn't just be a decision about money, because ultimately, if you steward it well, if you do well, then there's reward in that. That's just biblical teaching, right? And so, yeah, I would say it's important, but at the same time, it can't be the love of it. It's the stewarding of it is more so the important piece.
No, man, that's dope, man. You got a lot of points, man. I really like that, man, because you talked about self-reflecting a lot. I think for me, I made the opposite. I made a mistake. I was like saying yes to everything, try to have so many titles in my 20s. And then like, I didn't self-reflect. I didn't look back on what my purpose, my calling, and that caused me to go depressed. That caused me to be like at a rock bottom because I didn't know what to do. I thought, God, I missed the mark, or I thought you're mad at me or something. But at the end of the day, God was just saying, hey, you need to go back into the basics, self-reflect. What did I call you to do? And then from there, you can go outwardly. So it's like the inwardly first. So that was really good. That was my question, but you answered it. So I appreciate you for that. I guess what I can ask is, in college, go back a little bit to your testimony now, like going to college, going to NFL, you hit that mark. You hit what every kid's desire to do. Can you talk about some of the ups that you saw, some of the downs, and how did that transition you to what you're doing now? Because you could have been a coach, you could have been a high school coach, you could have been a college coach, but why'd you choose business? Can you talk about the ups and downs in that experience that led you into business today?
Yeah, for sure. So one, the reason I got into business is I've always wanted to get into business since I was a young age, because I knew after sports there was a time I had to retire, and anybody that was able to continue on and create something or more money than what football did was someone that was in some form or fashion of business. So, okay, cool. It's either that as business or real estate is what I saw. And so that's kind of what drew me to it. And I like the operations of I like operations. I like systems. Cool. Put this here, put this here. Oh, I see how it works. Great. Does it work? Let's put this person here. Let's put this person there. Let's see it. Let's make it happen. Right. Like that was always fun, connecting the dots and like making the system run. And so that was business always intrigued me. But back in college, in like navigating, I want to make sure I answer your question correctly there. Back in college, your question was what particularly?
Well, it was more like what you saw in the NFL. Like you experienced everything, like the Jets. You experienced like abundance of women, a lot of young men, a lot of young women. That's what they chase, either whether it's sports or the Olympics. They feel like that's the high goal, and then that's when they hit rock bottom and they don't know where they're at. And so for you, can you just talk about like that experience, the highs, the lows, and then kind of transitioning into business?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So one, all those things are cool. They are, right? That's just the honest truth. However, at the same token of that can be a very dangerous line and a very quote unquote, people say fast life. And the reality is that you miss the things that are most important and impact and stuff like that too. So what I'll get into why, because all the experiences and being on a jet's cool, being on like, that's fun. Who doesn't want that, right? I'm not going to lie to you and say it's not cool. However, the reality of that too is if that's what the things that you chase typically will always run away. Think about the whole definition of the word, right? If I'm chasing something, it means I'm always chasing something, right? Like didn't say caught something, it's a chase. So if I'm chasing something, I'm chasing more, I'm chasing more, I'm chasing more. I'm always going to be chasing more. It's an ever-ending pursuit. And pursuit is important, right? Chasing after the right things is important because that's what we're called to continue to keep being better at. But if we're chasing the wrong things, one plane will never be enough. You need two. Well, one woman will never be enough. You'll need two. One business will never be enough. You need two. Well, you see, like at the end of those other decisions that you make for the two, you jeopardize the one and you can lose both, right? You can't have two rabbits. They go in two different directions. You got to pick one. And the reality is people try to play both. And so that is the dangerous game of it, right? Because I know guys that they have one jet, but they need another one. Why? What's the point? Because they just need more. And so if you're in the whole thing of like more, then you start falling into the love of money, right? Like it's very easy. And it's not like there's a fine line, right? Because there's smart strategic decisions that like increase portfolio in the business, like mindset wise. But there's also like decisions that are made like there was no reason for that. It was just because what was the point for that, right? Like there's definitely that there. Like I've seen guys spend stupid amount of money to charter a jet for their family, and they could have just flown JSX and ran out the whole plane for literally 80% less. Like just dumb decisions, right? But it was more of like I just wanted the fly, right? And so that aspect is important to understand because I've seen that part of it. So navigating all those different things, it brings out more of who you are, right? Like I said earlier, like money just is a tool and it will use the person using it, right? Frankly, like, you're like, and a lot of people are like, oh, dude, it is a tool, right? And from like whatever it may be, a lot of times money is using that person, like the person stewarding. If I have a hammer over here, it's only as good as I am with the hammer, right? Like that doesn't change. It just operates. If I'm good at making more of it, if I'm good at using it well, then it makes more and it's used well. But when we fall into something that our gifts have made room for, then we don't steward it well. Then it can be a fast life, right? And I've seen that happen where guys have everything and then you have nothing because they didn't steward it well. And that gift was a harvest season. And now there's nothing else to harvest. And that's a sad place to be, unfortunately, right? It's because you can't go back. Like you gotta build a different garden. Like, you know what I mean? And so, especially from the sports mindset, right? It's like you spend 20 plus years of your life roughly doing one thing. And then someone said, hey, you need to go be better at something else now because you made certain decisions. That you got to start from zero. Like that's different. But if you steward well, then it makes sense, right? And so there's that, right? It's very obvious in why like being rooted and being surrounded with the right people is important because money can go way faster than it came in. That's just the facts of life. You can spend it faster than you can make it most of the time. And so if we don't understand that, then we think it's always coming. And then all of a sudden one day it stops flowing in. You're like, oh, wait, hold on. Like what happened to the flow, right? Like that's where, well, obviously wisdom plays in part. So I would say the easiest way to sum up my answer is probably like the chasing aspect, that analogy of like, if you're chasing the wrong things, you'll always chase it. You always want more. You'll never be satisfied. And that's a sad place to be if those are the things you're chasing, right? Like how unfulfilling is it that at the end of your life, you've got 5 planes, you've got 5 houses, and they're always empty and they just sit on the tarmac. That sucks.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and imagine if you could have done something completely different where you could have the jets, you had one, but they were always being used and you're flying people out. You were having like bringing people in, stewarding people, discipling people with the same jet, like the same amount of money, but you just spent it differently. There's transformation. It's fun. Like your house isn't huge and lonely. Its house is full and big, right? Like there's a way to have an and. I think one of the biggest things, especially as I feel like Christians too, sometimes is like we forget because there's a fine line with this, right? But I think the part, and hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying, is like God sometimes is a God of and, not a God of like this or that. And what I mean by that is like you can be a full on fire for God person and be wealthy and have a great community of people around you and be successful in business. You can.
I believe it.
Right? Like King David was that. Right? Solomon was that. He was the richest person ever.
Yeah.
Like, and so there's God is a God of and. However, like we don't want to. This is where like the whole sports thing comes into play. It's like I don't want to pursue God because of the ands, right? Those are an overflow of his stewardship in me. If I'm chasing the ands, that's the problem to your questions. Like if I'm chasing the ands, and the business and the house and the money, and I'm chasing that, and that's why I'm going after God because I want favor on that. I missed the boat completely. It's actually upside down. You got to flip it. Like those things come from an overflow of stewarding and spending time with God and making decisions. And if those all get taken away, I'm not wrecked. I'm not lost. I'm already on alignment. Cool. If God brought it to me, he can bring it to me again. I'm good. Like, that's a different place. But if you have someone that doesn't operate that way and those things taken away, they usually commit suicide. Why? Because they don't have the depth. They don't have, no, like the most precious thing is in that situation is like God's the most precious thing in that space. Because if he brought it to me and everything bows to him, he can just recreate it. Like, he created me, he created all these different things. Well, why can't he? Like, why couldn't it happen? Like, so like you lose all hope when you don't have the hope, like, the person that provides the hope, right? Like, look, when you chase those things and that becomes the chase, when that animal that you're chasing gets shot and is dead, there's nothing to chase anymore. It's like, why am I even living? Right? Like,
yeah.
And instead of like, I'm chasing God, which there's a different space there, right? So that's the part of and I think is important. Now, obviously, there's sometimes where the and is not relevant, right? Like, it's like, don't chase that one. It's not just about getting more. Like, that's not the goal, right? But I think a lot of people get pigeonholed and like, I can only do one thing in my life. I can only be good at this one thing. And God's like, no, I gave you many gifts.
Yeah.
You do a lot of different things and do them well, steward them well. But that also doesn't mean that you spread yourself so thin. Like, I want you to develop them to where they can actually be fruitful, right? Like, if you have multiple trees outside, the last analogy I know, but like you've got like, if God, like, for example, like view as like gardening, right? Like, if you have a tree that produces one type of fruit and another tree that produces another type of fruit, another tree that produces another type of fruit, I'm going to steward them well so they produce fruit, right? Like, that's the whole goal. I didn't fall in love with the tree. I fell in love with the stewarding of how to do it well. And that's where we have to fall in that space too, right? Because if we don't, then the tree dies.
Man, that's good. That's good. Everything that you want should be a byproduct of the pursuit of your purpose, right? It's like, like we all have our gifts, our skills, right? You're skillful in business, right? So you have all these byproducts, but your purpose and your passion is with the business. It's just, you know what I mean? Like your purpose, which you felt like when you were younger, was to play in the NFL. There's all these different byproducts, which doesn't make it evil. It's just a byproduct of being a master at those skills from what you had steward. And that's such an impactful message, man. That goes into, what we do with Crowned is we cater to Christian entrepreneurs and business owners, creatives and brands to show them that, to showcase people like yourself and other people throughout really the world, frankly. But I don't think we do a good job of expressing that, or the people that are at those levels that believe the same things that we believe, they don't have the and conversation enough with the ones that are trying to really make it to the levels of 7-8 figure business owners. And so we start to hear those things that we were talking about before, the love of money, right? And we're like, oh well, I don't know, and we start to put ceilings on ourselves, and it's just like a cycle that starts to happen. But that's why I love what you're talking about. That's what we totally believe in with Crown. That's gathering entrepreneurs, high level entrepreneurs together to create that impact, to create that influence, man. So I love talking to you because you get it.
Yeah. For me, I'm gonna say Pastor Taylor. I appreciate you for the word today. I don't know if you've been called pastor before, but all those analogies, it's a gift, man. Usually when I see someone that speaks like that, I'm like, hey, you a pastor? But I just praise God for you. Encouraged me, man, because I feel like you spoke directly to me on that. Because a lot of times you forget, you got to renew your mind every day. And so it's good that you came and spoke about that. And so that's exactly what I needed. So I'm pretty sure the audience is going to need that too. So I just appreciate you for sharing that because it hit home.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. That I don't take that word lightly. That means a lot. It really does. I understand anytime like podcasts or any types of things like this. I don't want to take it lightly because I know it's important, right? And so I appreciate that. That means a lot.
I mean, for me, I have no more questions. You pretty much answered like everything for me, man. The questions I was going to think of, you already answered it before I even asked. So I'm good, man.
I got one last question.
Yeah.
And I've seen this tossed around a few different times on social media. I'd love to get your perspective. But if you had to choose one, sales or marketing, which is more important?
Yeah.
That's a good one, man.
I would ask a clarifying question. Would be my first thing is as a skill or as a tactic?
I'd say from growing a business.
Okay. Because as a skill, it's different, right? And as a business, it's a different situation. As growing a business, the reality of it's probably it's going to have to be marketing, because even if you suck at sales and you had 1,000 people come in because your marketing's great, I could shoot at 10% and I'd still make money. And the alternative to that is you can be great at sales and get one lead and you close 100%. The other guy might have a better shot, even though he sucks at sales. He'll get better over time, right? Like, and the reality is like, okay, cool. Next month I have 2,000, 3,000. He's got the 10,000 people he sold to, and he just got better and better with each sale. So ultimately, as a business, they'll get better as long as you have the people coming in. So I would say marketing.
That was a good answer, man.
Love it, man. Cool. Yeah, I mean that's all I had to ask. I got no more questions, man. Again, Taylor, appreciate you coming on. Where can everybody find you? Website, social media, YouTube. Go ahead and give everybody that information, man.
Yeah, on pretty much any social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, just my name. Instagram is T-Sim, I believe. I can't change it anymore because once they verified my account was the NFL, I can't like go back because it takes away the whole process. So it's just T-Sim, which is like my first initial and then my last three, I guess. Initials on my last name. So if you type in Taylor Symmank, it'll be easy to find on any social media. And then, yeah, reach out to me. I try to respond to everybody as much as possible. I love connecting with new people. Anybody I can help, want to. So please reach out.
Great. Man, no, this was great. Unless you have anything, Joe, we like to end the show with the guest, praying us out if you don't mind. You don't have to, but if you don't mind, just pray us out, and we appreciate you for your time today.
Yeah, for sure, brother. Yeah, I thank you so much for this opportunity. I thank you for the space and the privilege of being able to connect with, and just fellowship with other guys. Lord, I pray that the word that was spoken and the things that we talked about, whether whoever listens gets an opportunity to hear in the right frame, in the right perspective, to help them walk through what they're walking through or get over what the things they've been challenged with for a period of time. Lord, I thank you for this opportunity. Help us to continue to keep deflecting everything to you and everything that we do in business and life, and sports and in anything, and keep our perspective clean and clear, and not to get too much into what we're doing, but get into part of like, how can we be involved in what you're doing? Because we're just stewarding the gift and the creation that you made with it. So help us to never forget that and get in our rightful place, if that makes sense. But God, I pray just bless this episode, help us to get in the right hands, get in the right ears, and to be heard correctly. In your heavenly name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Taylor Symmank, we appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you guys having me on.
All righty. It's Crowns Cast episode 14. See you next time.